Nneka Eze knew the exact weight of a full bucket of water. She knew the specific ache that settled in the small of her back after scrubbing a floor for 3 hours, and she knew how to stretch a 50 naira loaf of bread to last 2 days. But she hadn't always known these things. There was a time, hazy now like a dream viewed through dusty glass, when she was just little sunshine. That was what her father called her. He was a tall man, with a laugh that rumbled in his chest. Every evening he would lift her up when he came home, spinning her until the world was a blur of color. Her mother, a woman with gentle hands and a voice like running water, used to braid Nneka's hair every Saturday on the porch, humming old songs. Then came the sickness. It was brief, brutal, and expensive. Her father died before the doctors could agree on what was wrong. The silence in the house was deafening. Less than a year later, grief or perhaps a broken heart took her mother too. Nneka was 16 when the silence became permanent. Relatives came, not to help, but to divide. They took the furniture, the electronics, and the small savings account. They left Nneka with nothing but the clothes in her bag and a terrifying realization. She was alone. School became a luxury she couldn't afford. The uniform was sold, the books were given away. Nneka Eze, the girl who wanted to design dresses that made women feel like queens, became Nneka the cleaner, the errand girl, the water seller. 7 years later, Nneka sat on the edge of a thin, lumpy mattress in a room that smelled of damp concrete. It was a face-me-I-face-you apartment, a single room no bigger than a storage closet. A wobbly wooden table stood in the corner, holding a plastic plate and a spoon. A bucket for water sat by the door. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She smoothed the skirt of her black dress. It was faded, the fabric thinning at the knees, but it was clean. She had ironed it 3 times. Today was different. Today she wasn't just scrubbing floors in a roadside eatery. Today she started at Sterling Heights. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of rain coming through the window. "Please God," she whispered, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her stomach, "just let me keep this one." The Sterling Heights building was a monolith of glass and steel, towering over the chaotic city streets, like a judge looking down on a noisy courtroom. It reflected the grey, angry clouds swirling above. By the time Nneka reached the front gate, the sky had opened up. The rain didn't fall, it hammered. The gutters overflowed, turning the roadside into a churning river of brown sludge. Nneka clutched her bag to her chest, trying to shield her hair with a broken umbrella that listed sadly to the left. She was 20 minutes early. She needed to be perfectly on time. Near the security post, huddled on a stack of hollow concrete blocks, sat a man. He was a jarring sight against the polished exterior of the corporate fortress. He wore a faded grey hoodie soaked through to the skin and trousers that ended too high above his bare, muddy feet. He sat perfectly still, head bowed against the deluge, looking like a piece of discarded furniture. People rushed past him, men in sharp suits holding briefcases over their heads, women in heels clicking hurriedly toward the dry lobby. No one looked at him. It was as if he were invisible. Nneka paused. The cold rain whipped against her ankles. She shouldn't stop. She couldn't afford to. Be wet, let alone late. Suddenly, a blur of motion caught her eye. A teenage boy in a ragged yellow shirt darted out from behind a vendor's stall. He lunged at the sitting man, snatching a worn leather wallet from the pocket of the man's hoodie. The man on the blocks flinched, his hands grasping at the air, but he was slow, weak from the cold. "Hey!" Nneka shouted. The sound tore out of her throat before she could think. The thief looked back, startled. Nneka didn't hesitate. She dropped her umbrella and ran. Her flat shoes slapped against the wet pavement. The thief, realizing this wasn't a fight he wanted, threw the wallet into a puddle and vanished into the traffic. Nneka skidded to a halt, panting. She scooped up the wallet. It was heavy, slick with mud. She walked back to the man on the blocks. "Here," she said, breathless. He dropped it. The man turned his face toward her. He looked exhausted, his eyes rimmed with red, his stubble rough and unkempt. He took the wallet with trembling hands. "Thank you," he said. His voice was low, calm, and surprisingly melodic. It didn't sound like the voice of a man sleeping on the street. "I wasn't fast enough." "I saw," Nneka said, wiping rain from her face. She looked at him properly now. He was young, perhaps late 20s, but he looked beaten down by life. But it was his wrist that caught her attention. On his left wrist, partially hidden by the wet sleeve of his hoodie, was a watch. It was silver, sleek and intricate. Nneka didn't know much about luxury brands, but she knew cheap metal rusted, and this gleamed even in the grey light. It looked expensive. It didn't make sense, but the shivering of his shoulders was real. "You're soaked," she said. "The rain is cold today," he replied simply. "I am Lucas." "Nneka." She looked at the building, then at him. She had 10 minutes. She reached into her bag. She had 300 naira, enough for lunch and her transport home. "Have you eaten?" Lucas shook his head. Nneka pressed the money into his cold hand. "Take this. Buy something hot." Lucas paused, his fingers brushing the notes. He looked at the money, then up at her eyes. "I cannot take your money, Nneka. You sound like you need it." "I have a job," she lied. Technically, she hadn't started yet. "Take it." He extended his hand and gently pushed the money back toward her. "No, thank you. Your kindness is enough food." Nneka looked at him stunned. A beggar refusing money? The rain intensified, a sheet of white noise. She couldn't leave him here. He would freeze. She grabbed her broken umbrella from where she'd dropped it and forced it into his hands. "Hold this at least." Then she made a decision that made her heart hammer against her ribs. "Come with me," she said. "Where?" "Inside. Just inside the gate. There's a service corridor near the janitor's supply room. It's dry. Security won't see you if we're quick." Lucas hesitated. "You could get in trouble." "I'm already wet," Nneka said, grabbing his sleeve. "Come on." The Sterling Heights interior was a different universe. The air was conditioned, smelling of pine and expensive cologne. The floors were marble, so polished they looked like liquid. Nneka managed to sneak Lucas into the small alcove behind the large potted plants near the service elevators. It was warm there and dry. "Stay here," she whispered. "I have to go. I'll come check on you at break." Lucas nodded, leaning back against the wall, clutching her broken umbrella like a shield. "Thank you, Nneka." Nneka hurried to the locker room, her heart racing. She changed into her blue uniform quickly, smoothing her hair. She was 2 minutes late to the briefing, but the supervisor, a tired-looking woman named Mrs. Abioye, didn't notice. The morning was a blur of mops and buckets. Nneka kept her head down, scrubbing the endless expanse of marble. The office was buzzing. The gossip was electric, jumping from cubicle to cubicle. "He's back," a receptionist whispered loudly near the water cooler. "The CEO, Mr. Sterling." "I heard he's young," another woman giggled, "and single." "And ruthless," a deep voice added. Nneka dipped her mop into the bucket. She didn't care about billionaire CEOs. She cared about the homeless man shivering in the service corridor. At noon, the atmosphere in the lobby shifted. The elevator doors opened, and Vanessa stepped out. Vanessa was the floor supervisor for the administrative staff. She was stunning, tall with skin like caramel and a weave that probably cost more than Nneka's rent for 2 years. She wore a tailored red suit that screamed authority. She didn't walk. She patrolled. "Call this clean?" Vanessa snapped at Nneka, pointing a manicured fingernail at a microscopic smudge on the glass door. "I'm sorry, Ma. I'll do it again," Nneka said, bowing her head. "You better," Vanessa sneered. "We have high standards here. This isn't the market." Vanessa turned, flipping her hair, and headed toward the service elevators to check the inventory. Nneka's stomach dropped. "Lucas," Nneka dropped her rag and scrambled after her, but she was too late. "What is this?" Vanessa's voice rang out, sharp and piercing. Nneka rounded the corner to see Vanessa standing over Lucas. Lucas had pulled his legs in, trying to make himself small. "I said, what are you doing here?" Vanessa shouted. "Security! Who let this filth into the building?" "Please, Ma." Nneka stepped forward, her hands trembling. "He's not bothering anyone. It's raining heavily outside. He's just taking shelter." Vanessa spun around, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, is he your boyfriend? Did you bring your beggar boyfriend to my office?" "He's a human being," Nneka said, her voice shaking but audible. "He was freezing." "He is a security risk," Vanessa yelled. "Look at him. No shoes, dirty clothes. He smells like wet dog." She kicked the tip of his foot. "Get out, now." Lucas stood up slowly. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He pulled his hood up. I am leaving, he said softly. See that you do, Vanessa hissed, and take your trash with you. She pointed at Nneka. The lobby had gone silent. People watched, secretaries, junior execs, security guards. No one moved, no one said a word. They looked at Lucas with a mixture of pity and disgust, but mostly they looked away. Lucas walked toward the revolving doors. He held his head high, a strange dignity in his posture that the rags couldn't hide. Nneka looked at Vanessa, then at Lucas's retreating back. You're heartless, Nneka whispered. I'm professional, Vanessa snapped. Get back to work, or you can join Jaime on the street. Nneka looked at the mop bucket. Then she looked at the rain smashing against the glass doors. She turned and ran after him. Nneka caught up to him just outside the gate. The rain had not let up. Lucas was standing by the curb, the water instantly soaking him again. Lucas. He turned toward her voice. Nneka, you should be inside. She had no right to speak to you like that, Nneka said, angry tears mixing with the rain on her face. Nobody has that right. People speak the way their hearts allow them to, Lucas said. He sounded tired. I am used to it. Where do you stay? Nneka asked. Do you have a place? Lucas paused. There is an unfinished building down the road. It has a roof. Nneka looked at his bare feet. She looked at the expensive watch that made no sense. She looked at the shivering. No, she said, no. You're not sleeping in an uncompleted building, not in this weather. Nneka gripped his arm. My place is small. It's very small, but it has a roof and a door that locks. You can stay there until the rain stops. Nneka, I cannot. I'm not asking, she said firmly. Let's go. The journey to her apartment was long and wet. When they arrived, Nneka unlocked the padlock and ushered him into the tiny room. It was stuffy but dry. She guided him to the mattress. Sit, I have a towel. She bustled around the small space, finding her one good towel and handing it to him. She lit the small kerosene stove to boil water for tea. I don't have much food, she apologized, measuring out a cup of rice. Just rice and oil, but it's hot. Lucas sat on the edge of the mattress, drying his hair. He looked out of place in the tiny room, his long legs cramped. This is a palace, Nneka, he said, because it is given freely. Nneka sat on the floor while the rice cooked. Why do you have that watch? She asked. She couldn't help it. Lucas touched the metal band. A shadow crossed his face. It was a gift, from a life I used to have. You weren't always on the street. No, he said softly. I lost my way. Sometimes life strips you bare to see what is underneath. I know that feeling, Nneka said. She told him about her father, her mother, the Saturday braids, and the silence that followed. She spoke about her dream of fashion, of making clothes that told stories. Lucas listened. He didn't just hear, he listened. He asked questions about fabrics and colors. For the first time in years, Nneka felt seen. That night she slept on a mat on the floor, giving Lucas the mattress. He protested, but she refused to hear it. You are a guest, she said. In my house, guests are kings. The next morning the rain had stopped, but the storm inside Sterling Heights was just beginning. Nneka arrived early, her eyes puffy from lack of sleep. She had left Lucas with a small loaf of bread and instructions to stay inside until she returned. Vanessa was waiting. She stood by the time clock, her arms crossed. Well, if it isn't Mother Teresa, she sneered. I'm surprised you came back. I thought you'd be busy running a shelter. Nneka didn't respond. She punched her card and went to the supply closet. The atmosphere in the office was heavy. Mrs. Kalu, the HR manager, watched Nneka with cold reptilian eyes as she passed. The other cleaners avoided eye contact. Nneka was marked. She had challenged the queen bee. At 11 a.m., a scream pierced the air. My chain, it's gone. It came from the women's restroom. Nneka, who was polishing the corridor railing, froze. Vanessa stormed out of the restroom, her face flushed. My gold chain, the one from Paris. It was in my bag on the counter while I washed my hands. It's gone. A crowd gathered. Mr. Bassi, a senior manager with a belly that strained his shirt buttons, bustled over. Calm down, Vanessa. Are you sure? I'm sure, Vanessa shrieked. I took it off for 2 minutes. Who was in there? Who cleaned the restroom 10 minutes ago? Her eyes scanned the crowd and locked onto Nneka. Her, Vanessa pointed, the girl who loves beggars. I didn't take anything, Nneka said, her voice trembling. I mopped the floor. I didn't touch the counters. Search her, Vanessa demanded. Now hold on, Mr. Bassi said, looking uncomfortable. Let's not be hasty. She brings homeless men into the secure building, Vanessa spat. She is desperate. Desperate people steal. Nneka felt the blood drain from her face. I am not a thief. Then help us look, Mrs. Kalu from HR said coolly. Nneka went back into the restroom. Her hands were shaking. She checked under the sinks, behind the bins. There, wedged between the wastebasket and the wall, something glittered. It was the chain. It must have fallen off the counter. I found it, Nneka called out, relief flooding her chest. She reached down, picked up the heavy gold chain, and turned around. Vanessa was standing in the doorway. A slow, cruel smile spread across her face. Got you, Vanessa whispered. Vanessa didn't wait for an explanation. She spun around and screamed to the gathered crowd. She had it. She was hiding it behind the bin. No, Nneka cried, stepping out with the chain in her hand. It fell. I found it on the floor. Liar, Vanessa lunged forward, snatching the jewelry from Nneka's hand. You were trying to stash it to collect later. I saw you holding it. Mr. Bassi, please, Nneka pleaded, turning to the manager. Why would I show you if I stole it? I called out. Mr. Bassi looked at Vanessa, the star employee, the one who managed the floor efficiently, and laughed at his jokes. Then he looked at Nneka, the cleaner with the frayed hem who had caused a security incident the day before. It was the path of least resistance. Nneka, Mr. Bassi sighed, this doesn't look good. I didn't do it, Nneka said, tears spilling over. I swear on my mother's grave. Save the drama, Vanessa scoffed. She's a liability, sir. Yesterday she brought a vagrant in. Today she steals. Who knows what she'll do tomorrow? Mister? Bassi nodded. We can't take risks, Nneka. Hand over your badge. Sir, please. Now. Nneka unpinned the plastic ID from her chest. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped it. It clattered on the marble floor, sounding like a gunshot in the quiet corridor. Get out, Vanessa said, stepping over the badge, and don't come back for your final pay. Consider it payment for the emotional distress you caused me. Nneka walked to the elevator. She didn't look up. She could feel their eyes, judgmental, amused, indifferent. She felt naked. She felt small. She left the glass building and walked into the crushing heat of the afternoon sun. When Nneka opened her door, Lucas was sitting on the floor, mending a tear in his trousers with a needle and thread he had found on her shelf. He looked up, sensing her mood instantly. Nneka? She collapsed onto the mattress and wept. It wasn't a gentle crying, it was a heaving, ugly sobbing that shook her entire small frame. She cried for the job, for the injustice, for her parents, for the dress designs that existed only in her head. Lucas moved to her. He didn't touch her immediately. He sat beside her, a solid, silent presence. They fired me, she choked out. They called me a thief. She told him everything. Vanessa's trap, Mr. Bassi's indifference, the shame. I just wanted to work, she whispered. I just wanted to save enough for school. Why is it so hard to be good? Lucas reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. His grip was warm and firm. Listen to me, he said, his voice dropping an octave, vibrating with an intensity she hadn't heard before. The sun does not apologize for being covered by clouds. It is still the sun. You are still Nneka. I have nothing, Lucas. No money, no job, and now I have you to feed too. She regretted the words as soon as she said them. I will not be a burden, Lucas said gently. But remember this, pride comes before a fall. Those who sit high today can be on the floor tomorrow. And those on the floor, they are the ones who learn how to stand. The next week was a blur of misery. Nneka pounded the pavement looking for work, but news travels fast in the service industry, or perhaps it was just bad luck. No one was hiring. To survive, she bought a small bag of corn and charcoal with her last savings. She set up a roadside stand near her house, roasting corn in the evenings. The smoke stung her eyes. The heat was unbearable. Lucas tried to help, fanning the coals, but she insisted he stay back, afraid the neighbors would mock him. She barely ate, giving the lion's share of the meager food to Lucas. She grew thinner. Her eyes developed dark circles. Then the fever came. It started as a headache, then a shivering cold that rattled her bones. Malaria, she knew the signs, but she didn't have money for drugs. "I'm fine," she told Lucas one evening, trying to stand up to tend the corn. The world tilted sideways, the ground rushed up to meet her. The last thing she heard was Lucas shouting her name, not with the voice of a quiet homeless man, but with a terrifying, commanding authority. Nneka woke up in a bed that was too soft. The air was cool and smelled of antiseptic and lavender. She blinked. White ceiling, beeping machine, a private hospital room. She sat up, panic seizing her chest. "Money," she gasped. "I don't have money." A nurse in a crisp white uniform walked in. "Calm down, Miss Eze. You're at Grace Valley Hospital. You're safe." "I can't pay for this," Nneka cried. "Where is Lucas?" "The bill has been taken care of," the nurse said, checking a chart. "In full. And you had a visitor, but he left." The nurse pointed to the bedside table. There, sitting on the polished wood, was a small keychain. It was a golden sun with a smiley face, and next to it a note. "For little sunshine. Rest." Nneka picked up the keychain. Her heart hammered. Who? How? Meanwhile, across the city, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the entrance of Sterling Heights. The driver opened the rear door. A man stepped out. He wore a navy blue Italian suit that fit him like a second skin. He wore shoes that cost more than a car. He was clean-shaven, his hair perfectly trimmed. His eyes were sharp, clear and blazing with a cold fire. Lucas Sterling had returned to his company. He walked through the revolving doors. The security guard, who had ignored the beggar a week ago, jumped to his feet and saluted, his eyes widening in recognition. "Mr. Sterling, welcome back, sir." Lucas didn't stop. He walked to the elevators. The lobby fell silent. It was the silence of predator, entering a clearing. He went straight to the top floor to the executive suite, and then, 10 minutes later, he summoned the entire staff to the main conference hall. The hall was packed. 300 employees stood in nervous silence. Vanessa stood near the front, smoothing her skirt, whispering to Mrs. Kalu, "I heard he's gorgeous. Maybe I can get a promotion today." Then Lucas walked onto the stage. Vanessa froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The color drained from her face, leaving her gray. It was the beggar, the man she had kicked, the man she had called filth. Lucas stood at the podium. He looked out at the sea of faces. He let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. "For the past week," Lucas began, his voice amplified and commanding, "I have been sitting outside this building. I have been sleeping in your corridors. I have been watching." A collective gasp went through to the room. "I wanted to know the heart of my company," Lucas continued. "I wanted to know if we are just a business, or if we are human beings." He looked directly at Vanessa. She was trembling visibly now. "I learned a lot," Lucas said. "I learned that for some of you, dignity is determined by the price of a suit." He pressed a button on a remote. A large screen behind him flickered to life. It was CCTV footage. It showed the restroom corridor. It showed Vanessa checking her makeup. It showed her taking off her gold chain, looking around, and deliberately dropping it behind the bin. It showed her smiling as she walked out. The room erupted in murmurs. "Vanessa," Lucas said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. "You framed an innocent woman. You mocked a man in need. You represent everything this company is not." "Sir, It was a mistake," Vanessa stammered, tears streaming down her face. "Cruelty is not a mistake," Lucas said coldly. "It is a choice. You are fired, effective immediately. You will leave this building without a reference, and if you ever step foot near my employees again, I will have you arrested for theft and defamation." Vanessa collapsed into sobs, but security guards were already moving to escort her out. Lucas turned back to the crowd. "There was one person," he said, his voice softening. "One person who saw a human being in the rain. One person who gave her last naira when she had nothing. One person who lost her job to protect her integrity." He looked at the camera at the back of the room. "Nneka Eze represents the future of Sterling Heights." Nneka was discharged 2 days later. She returned to her tiny room. It felt empty without Lucas. She missed his quiet voice. She missed the way he listened. She sat on the mattress, holding the sun keychain, wondering if she had hallucinated the whole thing. Then came the knock. A courier in a red uniform stood there. Miss Nneka Eze. Yes. He handed her a thick, cream-colored envelope with the Sterling Heights logo embossed in gold. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter. Nneka, I owe you a debt I can never fully repay, but I would like to try. Please come to the address below at 7 p.m. Lucas. Nneka borrowed a dress from a neighbor, a simple blue gown that fit better than her old black one. She spent an hour taming her hair. She took a taxi to the address. It was in Ikoyi, the wealthiest part of the city. The taxi stopped in front of a gate that looked like the entrance to a palace. The gates opened. Nneka walked up the long driveway, her heart in her throat. The front door opened before she could knock. Lucas stood there. He wasn't the beggar in the hoodie. He wasn't the terrifying CEO on the stage. He was just Lucas. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked healthy, strong, and handsome. Hello, little sunshine, he smiled. Nneka stopped staring. It really is you. It is, he admitted. I'm sorry I lied to you, Nneka. I needed to know who was real. I found only you. He stepped aside. Please, come in. The house was magnificent, but Nneka barely noticed the chandeliers or the art. She only saw Lucas. They sat on a balcony overlooking the city lights. Dinner was served, not rice and oil, but a feast. Yet Lucas served her himself, waving away the staff. Why? Nneka asked. Why go to such lengths? My father built this company, Lucas said. He taught me that a leader serves. When I returned from abroad, I heard rumors that the culture here had become toxic. I had to see it from the bottom up. He took a sip of water. I didn't expect to be saved. I didn't expect to meet someone who would give her umbrella to a stranger when she was already wet. He reached into a folder on the table. I have 2 things for you, Nneka. He slid a paper across. First, a job, not as a cleaner, as my executive assistant. You have the heart and the spine to manage people. I need someone I can trust. The salary is significant. Nneka stared at the number. It was more than she would have made in 10 years of cleaning. And second, Lucas slid a brochure across. It was for the prestigious Lagos School of Fashion and Design. I remember what you told me that night, Lucas said softly, about the dresses. You have a scholarship, fully paid. You can work part-time with me and study part-time. When you are ready, we will send you to Paris. Nneka covered her mouth. The tears came, but they were happy tears. Lucas, I don't know what to say. Say yes, he said. 6 months later, Nneka Eze walked through the halls of Sterling Heights. She wore a blazer she had altered herself, fitting her perfectly. She carried a tablet. Good morning, Miss Nneka, the new receptionist beamed. Good morning, Tolu, Nneka smiled back. She was firm but kind. The culture of the office had changed. Fear was replaced by respect. She entered Lucas's office. He was on a call, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. He ended the call quickly. Ready for tonight? He asked. What's tonight? Surprise. The surprise was the rooftop of the tallest hotel in the city. The wind was gentle. A violinist played in the corner. Nneka wore a dress of her own design, emerald green silk that flowed like water. She felt beautiful, not just because of the dress, but because she finally believed she deserved to be there. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that exists between 2 people who know each other's souls. You know, Lucas said, putting down his fork, I still have that umbrella, the broken one. Nneka laughed. Throw it away, it's useless. No, Lucas said. He stood up and walked around the table. It is the most valuable thing I own. It sheltered me when I had nothing. He took her hand and pulled her to her feet. Nneka, you saved me, not just from the rain, but from cynicism. You showed me that goodness still exists. He reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a wallet. He pulled out a ring box. Nneka gasped. He knelt. I have seen you at your lowest, and you were a queen. I see you now, and you are my inspiration. I don't want to run this company or this life without you. Nneka Eze, will you marry me? The wedding was held in a garden that smelled of jasmine and roses. Nneka's dress was a masterpiece, a swirl of white lace and pearls that she had stitched herself with the help of her professors. She looked like light personified. Lucas waited at the altar, tears in his eyes as she walked down the aisle. The guests were a mix of worlds. Tycoon sat next to Nneka's old neighbors. In the back row, unnoticed by most, sat a woman in a plain grey suit. It was Vanessa. She wasn't invited, but she had come. She watched the woman she had called a beggar lover marry the most powerful man in the city. She watched with a bitter pill of regret stuck in her throat, realizing too late that she had been fighting the wrong battle. As they exchanged vows, Nneka squeezed Lucas's hand. She thought of the bucket of water. She thought of the one-room apartment. She thought of the rain. She looked at the crowd and then at her husband. "I do," she whispered. Later, as they danced under the stars, Lucas whispered in her ear, "You are still my sunshine." Nneka rested her head on his chest. She knew the truth now, the one she would tell her children and her grandchildren. You never know who you are helping. You never know who is watching. Kindness has no uniform, and love is the only currency that truly matters. She had cast her bread upon the waters, and it had returned to her not as bread, but as a feast. The rain had stopped, the sun was out, and it was beautiful.